Welcome to a Legendarium special about the life of John Crabbe. When we think of pirates, we tend to think of the Caribbean during the late 1600s or the early 1700s. Yet in this episode, we will show that men lived a pirate's life centuries earlier. John Crabbe came from the town of Muiden, which is located on the Flemish coast. Crabbe is a common name in the city of Bruges and some other parts of Flanders. It is known that John Crabbe had two younger brothers named Peter and Baldwin. Other than that, it seems the world took little interest in John Crabbe until he turned pirate. During the year 1305, he rigged a ship with a catapult on its deck and then used it to capture another ship outside the French port of La Rochelle called the Waardenborg. This Dutch-owned ship had 160 barrels of wine on board. After taking the valuable wine, John Crabbe kidnapped the crew and burned the ship. Unsurprisingly, the Dutch owner proved less than pleased with this and sought justice in the courts. He failed because of a bitter rivalry between the Counts of Holland and Zeeland. John Crabbe would not be heard from again until the year 1310, when he led two Flemish ships in taking another merchant vessel in the Straits of Dover that traveled to London. This ship carried a cargo of cloth, silver, gold, and jewels, owned by Alice of Hainault, the Countess Marshal and an ally of King Edward II of England. Unsurprisingly, this did not please Edward II, and he sought justice from Count Robert of Flanders. Never a wise idea. When Count Robert failed to turn over John Crabbe, Edward II instead compensated Alice by taxing all Flemish property in England. That did not stop John Crabbe from stopping another two ships out of Newcastle upon Tyne, bound for Flanders. From these ships, he took 89 sacks of wool. By 1315, however, things had changed. Constant rain in Flanders led to a disastrous famine on the continent by the year 1316. Count Robert made Crabbe the admiral of a fleet of ships and gave him a simple mission: to seize food wherever he could find it. Of course, John Crabbe did what he did best, began taking ships, and soon complaints came to Count Robert. The Count insisted that he knew nothing about John Crabbe's depredations, but swore that if John Crabbe ever fell into his hands, he would break him upon the wheel. And of course, John Crabbe never did fall into the Count's hands. Instead, during the year 1318, Crabbe settled in the Scottish town of Berwick. At that time, Scotland was locked in the War of Independence against England, and when King Edward II besieged Berwick, John Crabbe helped to defend it against the English invasion. His efforts earned him praise from the Scots, and Crabbe began supplying the royal house of Bruce with food. It seems that John Crabbe became so pleased with Scotland that he married a Scotswoman and had a son with her. War broke out yet again between England and Scotland during the year 1332. King Edward III of England backed a rival to the royal house of Bruce named Edward Balliol. Edward Balliol descended from a man named John Balliol, who held the throne briefly before the Scottish War of Independence. Edward proved more successful than his forebear and defeated the royal army at Duplin Moor. The loyal Scots, under their regent Sir Andrew Moray, called Crabbe from Berwick to the Firth of Tay with 10 Flemish ships to help defeat the rebel. Crabbe attacked the English allies of Edward Balliol, but encountered fierce resistance. Indeed, John Crabbe lost his entire fleet, and Crabbe fled to Berwick. After another battle, Crabbe became an English prisoner. In order to save his life, John Crabbe swore loyalty to King Edward III, despite the fact that he spent most of his career preying upon English shipping. Unsurprisingly, this did not please the Scots, who then murdered Crabbe's son. Unsurprisingly, this did very little to endear John Crabbe to the Scots, so Edward III made John Crabbe the Constable of Somerton Castle, and there John Crabbe raised another fleet, fought for Edward III against the Scots and the French, and then died in 1352, which obviously put an end to his career as a pirate. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.